Welcome to episode 4 of Kat's Home Chat Live. We are so glad that you are joining us. And if you don't have time to watch the almost hour that we do today, this is going to be posted on our YouTube channel under tadabykat, and you can watch it after the fact. I would like to welcome our esteemed guest today, Mark McVey from Hancock Mortgage. I, by the way, am Kat Trulinos with Tada Next Level Staging and Design. Mark, tell us a little bit about you, whatever you'd like, from, I see sports in the background, to family,
Yes.
and how you got in the mortgage business.
I'm a dad. Those are my boys on the wall behind me. A couple of them play ball.
Oh, wow.
I don't think you can see the, I guess I've got my Air Force son on his photos on the table back there. It's not visible right now, but yeah, I've got 3 boys. So
Nice.
I guess I've always defined myself as a dad. That's the main thing. For me, I'm an empty nester now. So I've got one of them's an air traffic controller in Northern California. And
Wow.
medical representative for, and he goes into hospital. So it's been a real adventurous summer for him up in Fort Worth. And another is represents safety equipment for the industrial world down in Corpus Christi. So they're all spread out. And so that's who I am. You know, personally, I live
Love it.
little house with my 3 dogs. And
three dogs. I know we're both dog lovers. Yes.
I'm down a fish today. I know that may not seem like a big deal, but we were discussing the unfortunate passing of one of your precious puppies the other day. But
yes.
I had discovered an Oscar who's been struggling. I have a 100-gallon aquarium in the other room, and
Wow.
he's expired last night. So my Oscar,
I'm sorry to hear that.
I grew that little guy for about 3.5 years, and they get quite big, and they're very belligerent. So I don't think the rest of the fish will miss him, but
that's okay. It was time for him to go in
yes.
fish heaven.
So
Yeah.
I've been a loan officer with Hancock Mortgage Partners for about the last 5 years, and it is a challenging work balancing client needs and federal guidelines and getting it done. But it is very, very satisfying when we help someone cross the finish line and get the keys to their new home. Or
Absolutely.
find an amazing low rate. If I look tired, it's because we've been burning the midnight oil with these amazing low rates lately, and trying to help even more people. So it's an unusual time we're in, right? Where some of us are just crazy busy with work, and others are, on the sidelines, ready to get back into it. And so what do you say? It's an unusual time, but I'm very happy to be here with you this morning, Kat. Thank you for.
I am so glad. Thank you so much. We for jumping in so quickly. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Chad. A shout out to Chad with Hancock. Chad and I go back into new home sales and have a long history together. I really respect him and what he's done. And so again, thank you so much for jumping in here. And I know you have, just briefly, you come, as I do, from a corporate background prior to getting into lending. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I was executive for a big .com on the other side of town for about 14 years.
Awesome. Yeah. And I find in my industry and many industries, the corporate background is a perfect parlay. There's so many skills, transferable skills to take into your own, business should you decide to do that. So that's awesome. So today we are going to talk about, and as Mark and I were talking about, there's, I'm sure, many, many more myths than we're going to touch on today. But the 4 common myths about home buying. And let's start with the first one, which is that you need a big down payment is required to get into a new home. How would you address that and dispel that myth, Mark?
So you talk about past experience and how it brings us to where we are. I'm one of those guys. So I was in youth work. I worked for churches for about 15 years straight out of college. It was kind of a, sort of social work. So not a lot of money involved in that profession, but a lot of reward.
Absolutely.
Summer camps here and there. I moved, I moved quite a bit. I went from Oklahoma to Mississippi to Tennessee, back to Dallas, and then finally to the Woodlands. Rich, rewarding time in my life. Wouldn't have done it any other way. But I was one of those guys who didn't know what it took to buy a house. I didn't know, I had that belief that, boy, I'd better have a 20% down payment. You needed $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
Absolutely. Which I just want to parlay on that. I bought my first home in the 80s, and that is what you needed then. Well, that's what I thought you needed, was a 20% down payment, because our parents and our ancestors, that was the norm.
Yeah.
So I paid 13.4% interest rate, guys, with a pretty big down payment.
Yeah,
well, actually, it's because I put less than 20. I only put 10. So let's fast forward, because I know I look really good for 89 years old. Let's fast forward to 2020 and talk about, because many young people who are buying their first homes, they don't have that historical perspective. Even, when interest rates were 4, 5, 6, they would think, oh, they're so high. Not really. But so let's fast forward to 2020 and talk about that. I just wanted to interject and echo that with you about the myth back then of such a high down payment.
So I didn't purchase my first home until I was 40 years old.
Okay.
Too late. But I spent all those years believing that I couldn't make it happen. The discovery that you can begin without that massive nest egg was a life changer for me, and I've been very happy to share that with lots and lots of people. So there are zero down options out there. So the best loan in the business is a VA loan. Anyone who served and discharged honorably, separated from the service honorably, is allowed a zero down payment. That's a beautiful thing. I've got
absolutely
today, in fact, at 11 a.m., a veteran friend of mine is closing on his new home, and he is taking a grand total. We were talking about this yesterday. I double checked all the records and title adjustments. His closing costs today are $27 and some
well,
change.
I hate to be competitive, but I helped because I do help family and friends and referrals. And it was about 2 years ago, I helped a young couple, VA. He received money back.
Yes, well, that's not competitive. I mean, that's the story.
That's
for
a
VA,
reality.
Right?
No,
a friend of mine, and I call them friends because during the process, there's so many conversations, and we get to know each other, and we have kind of these discussions about life that you and I have already had in our short friendship here now.
Absolutely.
But I had a check. We had a client get $1,000 back at his closing.
There you go. So let's. So if we could, let's bullet point. Let's bullet point. So we've got zero down if you're a VA. Talk about 100% loan. What do I need to qualify to get 100% loan if I'm not a VA?
So the programs that we work with at Hancock, we don't have a simple 100% loan. That's more of a hard money type of situation.
Gotcha.
There are USDA loans that will allow for zero down payment.
And for folks who don't know, what is a USDA loan?
The USDA is determined by location of the property. So the client has to qualify, and those qualifications have risen a bit this summer with the pandemic. We've seen, I noticed last week on your show that there was a mention by the nice gentleman you had on last week about how Chase Bank had raised their base.
Yes.
700, got to have 700 better credit. All the programs have kind of seen some shifts this summer. USDA is not immune to that. Good credit is required, probably 680 or better. The debt to income ratio number also needs to be pretty low. We're looking at probably about 41% on debt to income ratio. And that's the total of all of your monthly obligations on auto loans, credit card payments. I know you know this, Kat, and saying this for the viewer. You don't have to include cell phone bills. You don't have to include utilities or groceries or gasoline, any things like that. The banks are aware you have those. And so they set up a limit on every loan of debt to income limitations. So the USDA loans zero down. You have to find a property that is in a rural area. That program
Rural. Okay, that's the key.
To support purchases of homes outside of the city limits somewhere out in the country, right? And there is a map at USDA.gov that talks about which properties are eligible for that.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat that because I actually have someone on my team, a young single mom who likes kind of the rural area, Magnolia-ish. Right. And so it's USA.gov.
USDA. Is that correct?
USDA.
.gov.
.gov.
And that's a full website. You'd have to go to the USDA loans portion of that page. Of course, the USDA covers, putting stamps on beef and approving, agricultural.
Well, that's what I thought. Am I talking about beef here? That's what I was thinking.
Right. You have to find the corner of that website that talks about their loan program.
Awesome. That is great information for here in Texas. And by the way, I didn't know you were in the Woodlands. I'm in the Woodlands.
Well, I'm actually in Deer Park now. So.
Okay. Well, we stage out there too.
Yep. Southeast side of town. So I kind of represent on the south side. And Chad, as you mentioned, is kind of southwest side. He's actually on a live right now with a group of realtors.
Is he? And he goes all over. Yeah. Yep, yeah. He's great. As we do. We what they say, we follow the money. We follow the need,
Wherever there's exactly.
So, okay. So just to recap, we've got VA, we've got USDA, not to be confused with beef. And then let's talk about FHA.
So when people use the term first time home buyer, we generally think in terms of FHA because it's a fantastic loan and unbelievably, like it's, we think things are upside down right now in the world. Well, in the world of mortgages right now, FHA rates, we've actually been getting better rates on FHA loans than we have on conventional loans. And we'll talk
what's the current FHA? Is it?
But 3.5% down is required. And so your rate, you talk about current rates, that's a very, very hot button question for a loan officer because, we can talk about Fed rate. Fed rate really doesn't have anything to do with the mortgage rate because the Fed rate can go down and the mortgage rate can go up.
Yes.
Excuse me. The rate is very, very personal for each and every individual. I ran an application yesterday for a gentleman who has 803 credit. That's very good credit. Yes. His rate at 803 credit and 28% debt to income ratio was, when we looked it up, 2.875. I love saying 2 because that's
2. I mean, mine's at a 3, but
mind blowing. Yeah.
2.
Yeah. I mean, 3 is a great rate. 3.5, 4% is a very good mortgage rate.
Absolutely.
But when we get into 2%, it's like, we're entering the twilight zone. They say there are $3 trillion in mortgage loans in the pipeline right now because of the massively low rates. So the industry is stressed.
Yes.
Because rates are so low. FHA loans, getting back on topic, I chased rabbits. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
FHA rates or FHA program is tolerant of debt to income ratio and credit score.
Yes. So let me just touch on that a little bit if I could. So when I started my new home sales career many years ago, and we did pre-qualifying right in the office, and would do a pre-qual and pick selections and everything. And the simplified way that touching on what you said, it's a very personal thing. I used to describe it as a 3-legged table. Okay. So, the 3 major is going to be, your credit score, your debt to income, and your reserves. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what we used. So those are 3 major components of putting together, how credit worthy you are. So if you're strong in one and weak in a little other, but a little stronger here, as long as they can balance it out, the underwriter, it's not an all or none. Am I correct still in that explanation?
Yeah, and absolutely. The credit and debt to income ratio would be the most important. Oftentimes reserve doesn't come into play, but it can strengthen a file.
Exactly. It can strengthen. If you're weak in one, it can strengthen. And that's why I say the three-legged table, because if you have a table and it's a little wobbly here, but you're a little strong here and here, you can still be stable,
Yes.
So yeah, those are all things to take in consideration. So for folks, again, who maybe be new to FHA, let's talk about a couple of the components, and I'm just going to throw them out there. You cannot have more than one FHA loan at a time. Is that still true? Secondly, it's a government-backed loan, and let's just talk briefly about all three of these. Let's talk about the PMI, or private mortgage insurance, and how that is effective in the longevity of it on a loan.
Well, so that's, on the FHA, it's definitely government-backed. It's not funded by the government. And that may be a misconception that a lot of people have. It's not a loan funded by the government, but it's backed by the government. And so that's how, obviously, federal guidelines have become a big part, especially on that loan, but really on every mortgage loan that's out there. Every mortgage loan is greatly affected by federal guidelines. It's kind of both the protector of the borrower and kind of the bane of the loan officer's existence, dealing with layers. I had an ex-realtor tell me that loan officers are ridiculous the other day, and it was because she felt like, well, we just ask for too much. Well, trust me, I would never ask a client, and Chad and I talk about this all the time, I would never ask a client for any more than I absolutely have to. We certainly wouldn't require anything unless we as a lender are required to ask for it, because we certainly don't want to set up any additional obstacles. Our job is to try to make it as easy as possible. So
absolutely. And I'd like to touch on that, because some consumers may have the misnomer that, that it's you and you're asking for all these things to make their life difficult. Number one, have everything digital. Most of the stuff you can send digitally to provide, but you want the same thing that your buyer wants. You want to close the deal. You don't get paid until you close the deal. Absolutely. So you're there to help them realize the joy and the magnificence of new home ownership. You certainly, you do not ask of anything that your underwriter doesn't ask. And the good loan officers, I've found out, and I know by word that you are one, will ask for those things up front, the things they know the underwriter is going to have a hot button on, so that you can set them up for success. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree. One of the first things we do after we receive an application is to send out our needs list. We know those are the basics. And then we do have talks about, you talk about reserves earlier, why do you want my 401k information? I'm not using it. And we'll talk through why. It's just helpful to have. If you've got $500,000 in a 401k, the bank says, oh, okay, if something bad happens, you can still pay your mortgage, even though those funds aren't going to be touched or used. I don't want to use anybody's funds in a mortgage unless they, plan to do that. And our job is to try to keep their costs down, not spend their money. Right. And so that's also one of those misnomers. But the FHA loan being backed by the government means that they allow for a little more of a loose
leniency
opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's not so tight on credit and debt to income ratio. The history of it's pretty cool. If you go back, I'm kind of a history buff. I love history. If you go back 75, 80 years, the FHA was created to help every man get a home, right? Just regular guy walking down the street.
And every woman.
Regular guys like me, yes, get a loan. Because back in the 20s, what's the Christmas movie with the savings and loan, and Jimmy Stewart saves the day and helps the people,
My husband would know the name. We watch it every year.
I know, right? I'm having a mental block here. But in those days, back in the 20s, if you wanted to buy a house, you needed to know the guy who owned the bank and say, hey, give me some money, and they would give you that $5,000 massive amount to build a house. Of course, fast forward, now you're asking for $250,000, $300,000 to buy a house. The FHA was created in those days to help every person, man, woman, get a home and make it possible. And so, thinking in terms of, okay, that's what this is all about. It's 3.5% down. So that demonstrates that you've got the ability to save at least something, right? So $7,000 on a $200,000 house. We use a strategy with an FHA loan where the realtor, and I'll work with realtors all the time to say, okay, we need this much seller credit to go find a home that will tolerate, say, $5,000-$6,000 seller credit. The realtor asks for that seller credit from the person selling the home. The buyer receives that $5,000 or $6,000, and we greatly minimize that initial investment.
Right. No, and those are great points. I want to stay on target because I know you and I could talk for hours on the depths and nuances of every one of these loans. So that's some good topics. And if anybody has questions, we're going to give you your, we're going to have your information later. But let's stay on point in terms of, we've got zero down, we've got FHA, which is, a phenomenal loan. Let's talk about just briefly, a conventional loan. I'm assuming 5% would be the lowest on a conventional. And then let's talk briefly about, because of the low interest rate right now, is it best to put more down on a conventional, or save your money and have it working harder for you somewhere else? So let's talk about a conventional briefly on that.
So the money being brought to the table is really the question, right? So a lot of folks confuse down payment with total cost. There's down payment, but that's only a portion of the cost in getting into a home, right? So we talk about 3.5% on FHA, or 5% on conventional. Those are the most standard programs that are out there, but there are closing costs and additional. So just talking about a strategy, we can use that with any loan to get seller credit to cover the rest.
Right. No, what we're talking about right now is down payment. I mean, there's 80-10-10. There's seller contribution. That's a whole another topic in terms of getting costs paid for. Absolutely. So yes, if
I've found quite a few buyers confused. They say, well, I heard it's 3.5% down, and they're thinking $7,000 for the total get into the house.
Yes.
So while we talk about down payment, it's worth a mention that there's additional costs. So we try to match every buyer with a program that best fits their needs.
Absolutely.
And the FHA is at 3.5% is a great loan. There's also one kind of in the middle here between the FHA and the conventional at 5%. And it's a home ready product.
What's it called, Mark?
It's a home ready product. The home ready loan is a government-backed loan, but it's a government-backed loan. You'd think, okay, well, it's gonna require a greater down payment. It's actually kind of a hybrid. It is a conventional government-backed loan that requires 3% down.
Wow.
Only 3%. Now, one of the limits of this program, we love this program. The buyer has to take a short course online before they get a contract. It's 3% down. It has the option then, and you mentioned this a moment ago. I didn't really address it. It has the option of losing that mortgage premium insurance later on in the life of the loan, just like the conventional. So the FHA has mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. Mortgage insurance is
okay. And I want to just stop you right here for a minute for, again, folks who, all these lending terms, et cetera.
Right.
You may hear the term PMI. It's private mortgage insurance. It's an additional premium, usually, what percentage is it usually of the loan?
Well, it's based on credit. So it's a portion of the loan, right?
Okay. So just know it's a portion of the loan. But if you think of it like this, it's insurance on the loan in case you don't pay. That's basically what it is. If you default on the loan, it's an insurance policy in case you default on the loan. And that's why it gradiates on scale, because it depends on how what kind of creditworthiness you have in your credit background. Okay, so that's PMI. You may have heard that with FHA. And so this home ready loan, you can lose the PMI. You actually can lose it with FHA also once you have so much equity in your home. So what's the difference with home ready loan? How do you lose that?
Well, on an FHA, it's with the loan. If you pay 3.5% down on an FHA loan, you'll have mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. With a 10% down payment on an FHA, there are conditions where you can get into a loan type that does lose it. But most of the time on FHA products, it does stick with the loan. At 80% loan to value on the home ready loan or a conventional loan, you can lose that mortgage insurance. And that's a big deal because
you can, okay, can you elaborate? You can lose it when?
At 80% loan to value.
Okay, so once you have 20% equity into the property.
Right. Once you've paid down 20%. Now, keeping in mind that when we get, when you buy the home, you may pay 5% down. The value of your home is going to rise over time. The amount of your mortgage is going to go down over time. And so as that gap increases, once you reach 80% balance on your loan, according to the value of the home, which has risen, right? So that rises over time. It would require an appraisal, but you can appeal to your servicer when you believe your loan has reached.
Absolutely. So to recap on that, let's say you put 5% down and the market went up 15%. Let's just say you now could appeal. So it doesn't mean you just have to pay down the loan. It has to do with the market value as well.
Right.
And that's a good thing. Yeah.
Anywhere from, we're seeing projected rates of 2.8% each year up to, in the Houston area, was over 4% a year value increase on home equity.
Right.
Right.
I think it's time for me to I think it's time for us to look at our loan, because I believe we did an FHA with 10% down.
Okay. Yep.
So I forgot that would qualify to lose the PMI.
You would want to call your servicer, and just double check on that to make sure that you're able to make that happen.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much. That's great information. We're going to move on to topic 2, which I think some of the topics are going to meld a little bit, but let's dive a little deeper into the myth that you need perfect credit. And I think to stay in line with our conversation, Mark, if we can just go through briefly the main loans that we just talked about, and let's just get rid of that myth that you have to have perfect credit, and what is perfect credit, and what is the credit that we need for each of these programs.
Sure. So there are opportunities at 580 and above. Now, if somebody comes with 595 credit, there's probably going to be points required on the front end. And what that means,
can you explain what points are for people who don't know what points are?
That's where I'm going. So what that means is you have to essentially pay the bank some money in order for them to give you the loan. So if you had to pay a full point, that's 1% of the loan value on the new property that you want to buy. So if you want to buy a home at $200,000, you're putting, you want to put 20% down. The loan is $180,000. You're going to pay $1,800 for a point to get into the loan. Now you can pay that point to get a better interest rate. And sometimes if it's a poor credit situation, I say poor, it's challenged, bruised, bumped. Everybody's been there.
Right.
That means that the bank says, well, it's a little bit higher risk. We want a point up front to demonstrate your great interest in getting this loan. We'll try to engineer that so that you don't have to pay any points. And so that, we find the best program to minimize that impact. But, some low 600, high 500 opportunities are going to come along with a little bit extra cost on the front end of the loan. Now,
Awesome.
to avoid that, a 640-ish credit score is required. And the reason I'm being vague is because when we talk about credit scores specifically, you talked about the three legs of the, on the table.
Yes.
The debt to income ratio plays a big role there. So if we have a 620 credit score and the debt to income ratio is 50% on an FHA loan, that's viewed as kind of tight and a little bit high. If the debt to income ratio is down at 20%, then that 620 score is much more tolerable by the banks and the risk factor that's kind of measured in.
Back to that three-legged table.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you'd really want to see, for best results, try to get that credit score up to about 640 for the FHA product, for any of the what we call govies. That would be a USDA, an FHA, a VA. Any of those will go down to those lower scores, but occasionally requires that extra point buy-in to get into the loan. For a conventional loan, 700-ish, maybe just a little bit low. And again, we're kind of in our upside down world right now. We've seen conventional loans actually working now in the 680, 670 realm. Whereas before they were asking for points on those, but it's a little bit more tolerable now. And we're talking about, late July. If we had this interview 6 weeks ago, I'd be saying, boy, if you want to get a mortgage loan, you need to bring a 680 or better score, period.
Right. And things change.
Right.
They do change. Yeah, daily, right? So just a side note, anybody who's watching or will be watching, because the majority of you watch it after it's recorded, I do the same. Let me know in comments, would you be interested in having someone, an expert on credit repair, talk to you about some of the simple, easy ways that you can improve your credit? I will tell you personally, this was many, many years ago, over 20 years ago. We came from California. We had tax liens. We had all kinds of stuff. And I personally, without actually using a service, improved my credit from 480 to 720. Okay, so there's some doable things.
Yep.
Some of you may not have, the time or the resources or the desire to do it yourself, but there's a lot of things you can do yourself. So please comment and let me know if you'd like us to bring on a guest on that topic. So let's move on to myth number 3. We're into about 10:33, and I want to leave about the last 10 minutes for questions for you. FHA and VA loans take longer to close. And this is one that, we've all heard, being in real estate for years, that it takes longer. Sometimes you used to see listings, they wouldn't accept FHA or VA loans, which is insane. I mean, our VA veterans, and FHA, government-backed loan. And so I don't think that is the case anymore. Tell us about that, Mark.
Yeah, on a personal level, I consider myself quite a patriot, and I love to help veterans. Like,
yep,
a good portion of our loans are VA, so we have a lot of experience in the VA side of things. In fact, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're here at 10:30. In about 30 minutes, a good veteran, a friend of mine now, will be closing on his new home. The only added step on a VA is what we call a wood destroying insect report. Essentially, a pest company.
It's a what? I didn't hear you.
It's wood destroying insect.
Oh, right.
A pest control company goes to the property, looks at the property, determines, number one, do we have termites? And number two, are there conducive conditions for termites? Pretty simple. If there's a little bit of wood rot, okay, you've either got to remove some wood and put it back or paint over it. In the case of the veteran closing today, it was an interesting one. It was even easier. This veteran, the home that he's purchasing had limbs hanging over the house, and that was deemed by this pest control professional to be conducive conditions. So they trimmed the tree back and went back out. They inspected it for a couple $100 total, all in. The veteran was able to make it right. We had to remove some dirt from a foundation one time. It's usually very simple, and that is the only added step the VA requires. And it's very simply done in 2 or 3 days, done along and congruent with the rest of processing. It takes no longer.
Right. So talk about FHA, any nuances to FHA as opposed to
never seen it delay. So the VA and the FHA, otherwise, the appraisal process is no different. Essentially, and any loan that's less than 20% down, all of them kind of fit in this bucket. All right. So I'll challenge somebody out there to come talk to me about this. The FHA, VA, and conventional loans all require, if it's less than 20% down, meaning it's not an investment property, the inspection, the appraisal inspection just says, can this home be moved into tomorrow and be livable? Does the AC work? Is the roof good? Is the foundation good? Is there a working kitchen and a working bathroom? Are all those things in place? Fine. And then determining value obviously is a big part of the appraiser's job, but essentially the minimum requirement for the appraisal on all properties less than 20% down, when they, in other words, they're not an investment property. If they're a primary residence for someone to go live in right now, essentially that property just needs to be livable. It doesn't matter if it has orange carpet and yellow walls and old 1970s decor inside. That doesn't matter. Is the house livable? Are these items in condition so that they will for the foreseeable future?
Awesome. So what would you say, Mark, is the average? I mean, we know cash buyers can close in 10 days, as quick as 10 days sometimes. A standard conventional is typically 30 days. Would you say that what is the average close time for a VA FHA?
No difference. When we run into delays, honestly, it happens. Sometimes it happens. In reality, the two things that can delay the loan process are right now, the appraiser.
Yes.
They're very bogged down with work right now. Some have left the industry because of COVID, and they don't want, they may be over 60 and thinking, boy, I'm in this susceptible range. So we've lost a few appraisers. And then there's the inspection of the property, where the current homeowners got to allow an appraiser inside to take a look. And so we're running into some of that logistical things. The appraisal process can potentially delay the process, although we haven't seen one in a good while where the appraiser actually delayed the process. I can't think back to an unconventional property that didn't have AC and 2 rooms, and they had to install permanent AC in the walls. There's a way around it. That was not even on a VA loan. It was a conventional loan. There are the other item that can delay loan processing is simply that the borrower doesn't provide documents when asked for. We need a set of documents initially, and sometimes the underwriter comes back and requires conditions. It's part of the deal. Usually there's a second set of documents that's requested at some point, whether it's an updated pay stub or an updated bank statement, something along those lines. So if a buyer's in a hurry, we'll get those docs in, and we can get those back in front of the underwriter very quickly. At Hancock, all of our people work under our auspices. Chad's team all works for Chad and is paid by, and we're all able to pick up the phone and say, hello, underwriter, what's up? What do you need from me? Can we do this? Can we do that? We'll spec a loan in the beginning to make those kinds of things happen. So sometimes there's questions that an underwriter can ask that'll streamline the process a little bit for us.
But overall, what I'm hearing is whether it's a conventional FHA or VA, it's any kind of delay would really be not loan specific.
I would have to say that's true now. Whereas I know in years past it hasn't been so.
No, I can tell you back in the Well, back in the 80s, okay, it was frowned. Very rarely did you see FHA. That's back when you had to have, huge down payments. And the reason being is because they were noted for taking a very long time and scrutinizing with a magnifying glass
Yeah.
everything in the home. So it was, it did have a stigma back then, but I think, as you mentioned, that stigma is pretty much gone.
Yeah, and I mean, in the '90s there was legislation, and I know that in the mid 2000s there was a lot back in the 2008, 9, 10. After the housing bubble burst, there was a lot of attention paid to these processes, and in some ways they've been simplified. In some ways, actually, they've been they've been made a little bit more challenging, honestly.
Sure.
Because of government attempts to make sure the industry is being honest and all those sorts of things.
Yes.
Another housing bubble, you can't blame them.
No, not at all.
But
so
there are layers now to the process. So
we have a brief question. And hey, John, how are you? Crystal, thanks everybody for joining. Jeff has a question. I think he tried to ask it to LeVar last time. We didn't address it. So I'm going to have you address it briefly before we get to myth number 4, and then we'll officially open up for questions. So Jeff wants to know, and Jeff, closing costs, we'll talk about that in another episode, but he wants to know if interest rate is low, would it be better served to do a 15-year loan or do a 30-year and pay it off early? I know what my answer is. What would you say?
if the interest rate is low, what was the last part of that?
Would you be better served to do a 15-year loan or do a 30-year and just pay it off early?
Right. So what we recommend is take the 30-year, because your monthly obligation is lower, and we can demonstrate, in good times, pay an extra $1,000 to principal.
Exactly.
Pay an extra $200 the next month. Pay an extra $1,000 the next month.
Yes, to principal only. To principal only. And years ago when I was helping first-time home buyers, and they would talk about that, I say, life happens. So put it on a 30-year, and then, most of us aren't disciplined. You do have to be disciplined, take action, and when you get that extra money, put it on. But you just don't want to be obligated if you do a 15-year and your payment's a lot higher, because, we know life happens. Gosh, we've certainly seen it in the last few months, unexpectedly. So good advice on that. I'm glad that's still the resounding answer there. So let's move on to myth number 4. And that is the down payment has to come from your own savings. Is that true?
It does not. Now, it definitely does not have to come from your savings. It can come from any of your financial instruments that you may have out there. Needs to be sourced. Thanks to the Patriot Act, we've got to make sure that money that is used in a mortgage transaction is not terrorist money. It's not drug money.
It's not drug money.
Right.
Darn.
And so we'll sometimes ask about, are you a drug dealer?
I'm a pimp.
Shy away from those if their answer is yes. But no, so sourcing is kind of a term that I think it was kind of created in the mortgage industry over the last few years. Money has to be sourced. That's
okay. Let me ask you about this, because I don't know if it's still true, but back in the day, I trying to get creative, helping folks realize the American dream, and they didn't have the down payment. Is there a case where you can get the down payment gifted, and tell me which loans yes, which loans no, from a family member?
You can receive a gift for any type of loan from a family member. And it's actually loosened up a little bit beyond that, because you can receive a gift for an FHA, for a conventional, for a VA, if you needed a down payment gift from a parent, from a spouse, and now even a domestic partner. So,
nice.
It doesn't have to be a blood relative. It can be someone, it could be two cohabitants helping each other buy a house. The funds still have to be sourced. a letter, a gift letter is provided. We put that together and send it. The family member or domestic partner would sign that letter saying.
So let me ask you about the domestic partner, just to make clear. Can you just be cohabitating, or do you have to have some kind of a legal paper that says you're a legal domestic partner?
The domestic partner or parent would sign a letter that says, I am such and such and in relationship, and
okay.
This money is a gift, not a loan.
Gift.
You can't get a loan to get a loan.
Right.
So it's, gift money can come from those alternate sources. Letters of explanation and gift letters, cover that. It is it's crime to lie on a mortgage loan application and get a loan. So I'm in trouble if I know about, somebody said, well, I'm a domestic partner and they're really not. That's a huge problem later on if it turns out not to be right. But it is allowed. And, of course, in these days and times that, that's a definition, that's a pretty big deal. And
awesome.
So that's something that is allowed.
That's really good to know. And being able to help more people is what it's all about. Realize the American dream,
Yep.
Because there is no place like home.
Absolutely not.
I wish I had my ruby red slippers here. There is no place like home and home ownership. So I think we are just about 15 minutes to the hour. Great information. And we will open it up and taking questions. So I've got Jeff proctoring. Can you see the questions on Facebook? Let's see.
That window.
VA loan is for those who served in the military. Yes. How about you, Crystal? I know you are dreaming of new homeownership. Do you have any questions there? And by the way, Crystal, because I know your daughter Kaya is going to be watching this, I wore my fancy earrings for her. So Crystal's on my team, and her teenage daughter said, "Oh, Kat is so fancy." So these are for you, Kaya, my fancy earrings. Okay, someone says home ready loan backed by the government. Oh, the movie, It's a Wonderful Life. I knew Jeff would have the answer. It's a wonderful life. And isn't it a wonderful life, guys? It really is. It really is. We're here, we're sharing, we're connecting. What are county bonds? Bonds. What are county bonds, and how can they help me buy a house?
I would not be familiar with that.
Okay.
County bonds?
County bonds. Can you elaborate? Okay. So here's another. We'll have to get to that. Maybe it's not county bonds. Maybe it's like industry bonds, like teaching bonds.
There are some. Harris County has some programs that they offer.
Really?
And they're more of a down payment assistance style.
Really?
Of loans.
Do you work with those at all?
We typically do not work with.
Okay.
The
Okay, let's move on to this. This is a really good one. Oh, he said bonds for nurses or firemen. Okay. This is really poignant in today because as I'd mentioned with LeVar, I've had some of my realtor partners tell me that, with the interest rates and the whole furlough and the COVID, conundrum we have going out here, that they are more stringent lenders as well as sellers to have a pre-qual letter versus a pre-approval letter. So we touched briefly with LeVar on that. Can you just give the components of, the difference between a pre-qual and a pre-approval, and how to set up our potential buyers for success in not going out with the wrong paper?
Well, in my opinion, pre-qualifying and pre-approval are the same thing.
Really?
The specific difference is pre-underwritten. Is it pre-underwritten? You can, and of course, what we would do every time we issue a pre-approval letter is we either view documents or not. If we're taking the information on the application itself and using that to issue a pre-approval so someone could go make an offer on a home, we'll let the realtor know and the client know, okay, we'll issue a pre-approval based on what we see, or we've gotten documents in and we see everything. That would be, maybe some people call it a pre-qual when we've reviewed tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements,
Yes.
and the like. Now,
Well, at least here's what I see, at least three things: that you verified income, they have a JOB, you've verified their credit score, their trifecta. What would be a third one? I guess their income and their score, and maybe their bank statements, but did some sort of background.
oh, I'm losing you.
Because, you know, the old and that's why so many deals would fall out.
Right. You know, it's possible for a lender to jump too quickly because they want to get a deal done and offer a pre-approval letter on a loan that clearly won't make it. We prefer to have obviously we have to have an application run because that determines debt to income ratio and verification of income.
Okay.
So the verification of the income is very important these days, and I think maybe the question alluded to, you know, the difference this summer is that they've really stepped up this employment verification. We've got to do diligence on the front end of the loan, and then within, I believe now it's within 48 hours of closing, we have to re-verify that this individual is still employed as they were a month earlier when we started the process.
Yes, and that hasn't changed. That's been the case for many years. A lot of people don't closing. The underwriter is going to check that you're still employed. They're also going to check your debt to income ratio. So if you go out and buy a whole, 5 rooms of furniture right before closing, that could change your debt to income ratio. And some people have had a big oops moment in doing that. So that's something you definitely want.
The underwriters have always done that soft pull
Yep.
to find out if there's any new debt. But
Yep.
The section that's added in our experience this summer is a verbal verification of employment, where we're actually to pick up the phone, processors or underwriter, speak to someone and say, so-and-so still employed there. Because we know records can be delayed, right? So we pull a credit report, it may reflect a balance on your mortgage loan that's a month or two behind because it just hasn't been reported.
Right. And unfortunately, yeah, that has been the case, because of the furloughing, et cetera. So Crystal has a question. What is out there for anything special programs for first-time home buyers? I know, FHA is typically that, but is there any kind of programs, funds, incentives, anything for a first-time home buyer?
There are, the Home Ready program that I mentioned earlier.
The Home Ready.
It's a first-time home buyer program. And there are some county-specific types of programs. Oftentimes, I would just say, be careful, buyer beware. When someone says first-time home buyer program, often that's more of a marketing ploy than an actual, benefit to the client.
Yes.
Kind of situation.
Yes.
There's no big pile of money sitting waiting for people who've never bought a house.
Right.
Oh, you get your share of this free money. Here's your house.
Right. They ain't no free money out there.
Yeah. Tread carefully when people, because a lot of times sometimes a first-time home buyer program may discount on the front end, but it results in higher rates, higher fees. And it's very important when you look at a loan like that to make sure that you get a good apples to apples comparison of a fundamental FHA or a Home Ready or conventional program, so that you'll be able to see, oh, wow, we found one in August just occurs to me because it was so egregious. There were $8,000 added fees it was actually a VA provider. It was on a VA loan that I actually ended up doing, but there were $8,000 in additional fees from someone who provided a lower rate. They added points and fees. It was going to cost the client a lot more to over the life of the loan. So
unfortunately, yeah, that's a smoke and mirrors. And unfortunately, you need to deal with a reputable, representative who is honest. And like you said, those are often marketing programs and smoke and mirrors, and that's certainly not the way to go. Is there any more questions? Let me see here. First time.
While you're looking, I'll just further address that. Find a lender who works hard to reduce your initial costs using multiple strategies, as we mentioned with the realtor. There are different things we can do to reduce those initial costs.
Yes, as well as negotiations. Your realtor is a negotiating expert on the closing costs, et cetera. Okay, one more great question, close to my heart and many people that I know, from Paula. Thank you for this question, Paula. She wants to know talk about the self-employed who shows lots of deductions and expenses.
Yeah.
How do you qualify for a loan, or is there any workaround or homework to do to make that happen?
Absolutely. I've got one right now that we're trying to work it out. So people who own their own business, who are self-employed, and in fact, people who work on straight commission, all kind of fall into the same realm, which is you need a 2-year history of income from that work that you report on your taxes, right? So we use your tax returns and then a profit and loss statement for the current year to determine, okay, where have earnings been on the average of 2 years previous, and where are they this year? The underwriter will scrutinize those pretty closely, and that's how we determine income. Paula mentions the deductions. Yeah, if someone makes $200,000 in a year, but they claim $180,000 in deductions, I've got to count that $180,000. So per the IRS and per what we can give, they only made $20,000 in a year.
Exactly, and that's
going to be enough.
Yes, that's the sad thing there. Years ago when I came here from California and I worked on a build on your lot company, and I had a gentleman owned his own trucking company, and he was just self-bragging about how much money he made, and of course he wrote everything off, and I'm just so sorry you don't show enough to afford to build a home. So talk to us about, because fortunately, thank God, we've owned our own for 22 years. But I certainly wouldn't qualify today to buy a home because I'm in business for myself, and like Paula, have a lot of deductions. So one of the things that we want to look into, and if you know any good CPAs out there in this industry, is to start paying myself, or paying, we don't pay ourselves. Is that something that Paula and others who are listening could look into, is start paying them? We just take the money and pay the bills and do stuff, and put it back in the business. Is there what would be a good workaround, like to be able to qualify when you are self-employed with a lot of deductions?
Yeah, so that aggressive tax strategy that can pull you out of contention can be tempered for a couple of years, right? We actually have a file right now, one of Chad's files we're working on with the self-employed gentleman. We're able to take a look at past tax returns and then project forward and say, okay, for the 2019 filing, which he extended, for the 2019 filing, if you file this much income, then you can qualify for this much home.
I love it. Okay, on that note, because we're coming right to the hour, and you have just shared so much valuable information, Mark, thank you so much. But I would love for folks to be able to contact you, and Paula, maybe contact, I know I'm going to be chatting with you offsite to see what is that strategy, help us put together a strategy for that, for folks who want to go down that road and set themselves up so that they could, realize home ownership. So what's the best way to reach you? And this is all going to be on YouTube, on the replay with a banner, but what's the best way to reach you for more questions? Sure.
So my number all the time and always on my cell phone here is 832-407-6181.
Repeat that, please. Repeat that.
832-407-6181. And my website is MM from Mark McVey, mmgoodloans.com.
Awesome. And where else can we find you? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram?
Absolutely all over Facebook. Mark McVey on Facebook, my personal page. Of course, I've got a lender page and I've got a page for a little realtors group that I have, and love to get involved on social media. Sure. So instant
Awesome.
message, direct message, text, email.
You can send him. It's like I tell people, you can text me, you can smoke signal me.
Yep, exactly.
And Mark is one of the, I'm not going to say few, but the elite, because everybody who knows me, communication is key, 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 key. You cannot over communicate. And Mark picks up his phone, he answers his text. This is one of my pet peeves of people in the industry, in any industry, that don't do that. And Mark's one of those that is in the elite family. So again, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you joining us today. Again, I am Kat with Tada, Next Level Staging and Design. Can be found all over as well. Before we sign off, I know we're going to go a little late, but I promised y'all, whoever signed up on my YouTube channel, because we are trying really hard to get 100 subscribers, and I believe we doubled since I put the post out. I'm so excited because once we get 100, we get our own URL, and that's kind of exciting. And so thank you all. We did a spin with Siri. We listed all of the names, the people that signed up. And I am happy to say that if you're listening or listening on the replay, Gay and Steve Watkins' team, Gay Watkins, actually, sorry, Steve, your name wasn't drawn, but Gay was, and she's part of your team. You have become the recipient of a Zoom design or staging consultation, value $195. So instant message me to receive that. I'm really excited for you. Let's give them a big yay. I don't have a horn, or I do a horn. And they are a very successful real estate team. Actually, Steve has taken one of my Trek classes. I have not met, I don't think, Gay. But anyway, congratulations on that. We're going to be doing it again because we're almost there. I think we're almost halfway there. And so I'm going to be sending out another, actually, Jeff will send out the link. I'm not high tech, but he sent out the link for that. And we're going to be sending it again. So if you haven't signed up, it's tadabykat, TADABYKAT, but he'll send out the link. Please sign up and then message me, because unfortunately, YouTube only tells me a few people. I think if you're not subscribed, if you're subscribed as private, it doesn't tell me. If you're not subscribed as private, it will tell me. More of you are private than not. So message me, and that way I know, and I will put you on the list for sure. And with that, I want to close with my standard: stay positive, stay hopeful, and stay connected. Connect with us every Friday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can watch us on the replay, and check out Kat's Tuesday tips. This Tuesday's tip got over 1,000 views already. So I guess people are liking the tips. And if you like it, engaged, comment, share, it'll help propel us to continue bringing valuable tips in all things home, all things real estate. We might even throw in a few oddities. Who knows? You just never know, especially when it's live. YouTube, we talked about Facebook, tadabykat, and pay it forward with positivity.
There you go.
Have a great weekend. Thanks again, Mark.
Thanks, Kat.
All righty. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.